So I wanted to sit down with you guys and watch this video with Jordan Peterson, all right? And he sits down to discuss the fallout over the far left woke agenda in schools nationwide, right? And he wants to sit down and basically discuss the decline of traditional values. So we're gonna check this video out together, man. If you're new, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and join the family, all right? Let's check it out.
65% of voters feel America is on the wrong track. And 37% of them feel the country's problems have gotten so bad we're now in danger of failing as a nation as we come up on our 250th year anniversary.
That's right. Psychologist and author Dr. Jordan Peterson is here to...
Hey, listen, I can't too much disagree, man. I do think we're in a bad spot. Seriously, as a nation, I think we are in a bad spot, man. All of the back and forth, the fight, and I think we're bad. We're in a bad political spot. I think we're even a much worse economical spot. So, yeah, I think these numbers are pretty close to being accurate.
To react. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. What is your reaction to this?
Well, I think if you spend 40 years demoralizing people, that it works. And we've spent probably more than 40 years. Since the mid-60s, we've been on a campaign to demoralize people. I think it started with the Club of Rome types who claimed that the world was overpopulated and that we're all headed to hell in a handbasket, and there's no evidence that any of that is true. I mean, the idea was that by the year 2000, everyone would be starving to death and that commodity prices would shoot through the roof and that the planet couldn't tolerate 3 billion people or 4 billion people, and all that turned out to be utter nonsense.
What does that sound like to y'all? We constantly speak about it on this channel all the time. It sounds like a scare tactic to me. It sounds like a scare tactic to promote fear and control. They want to control us. So they do this. They perform these little scare tactics on us, man. And we're just as guilty because we know it's coming. It's like a telegraph play in sports. You know it's coming. And you still allow it to affect you, myself included. They're good at what they do. Let's say that. They're good at what they do. It's just they do those scare tactics to promote fear and control.
We're richer worldwide than we ever were before. There's absolutely no shortage of resources. Commodity prices have gone down. There were world record harvests this year, and all you ever hear is doom and gloom.
Yeah,
you know, and I've been thinking about that a lot, and because I tend to think about things psychologically, obviously, and my sense is that people who want to garner power to themselves use fear. And I think that's how you can tell real leaders from wannabe tyrants, is that if they're trying to terrorize you into granting them all the power, then they're essentially tyrants and not leaders. And you see that happening everywhere.
Jordan, who are the 35% who think we're on the right track? Who are those people?
They're probably people who are temperamentally optimistic. You know, I mean, some of what determines people's attitudes about the future varies with the circumstances, but some people, you know, they're so optimistic by central temperament that even if they're in a crisis, they're not going to be upset. So
that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, they also tend to be conservatives, because we know as well that the most unhappy people are liberal men, and then I think the next most unhappy people are liberal women. And so, well, so the happy ones are optimistic, and they tend to be conservative.
I know you told me you spend time in Boston, a lot of time in Boston, but you're Canadian, but you spend a lot of time in America, so you got a sense of both. So is your sense that America feels negative about our own country because of a deliberate plot to make us not like what we have, feel guilty for what we've obtained, to resent our past? Or is this something that just happened? Or do you think it's someone scripting this?
Well, I think there's two things that are happening. Is that the culture war is a war between systems of ideas, and it's essentially a war between the ideas that are part and parcel of the classic Western tradition that's grounded in the biblical corpus, essentially, so Judeo-Christian culture, and the counter-reaction to that, which is kind of what post-Enlightenment Marxism. And so you have a war between two sets of ideas. But then you also have people who are acting directly in, you know, a quasi-conspiratorial manner. The Club of Rome types, for example, from the 1960s, who decided back then that, like as I said earlier, that the planet is going to hell in a handbasket and that something has to be done about that emergency. And so,
and we're the problem.
We're the problem. Yeah,
But
there's too
how-
many human beings on the planet. That's a good way of identifying people who are definitely not your allies. If people who think there are too many people on the planet, that is not a good thing to think. That's like something with genocidal. That's got genocidal implications.
Can I just ask you, just about our country in particular?
I agree.
There's so much to like. We used to be
Yeah.
a country that was too boastful, where people were like, enough with America being the greatest, and we.
Hey, I'm still like that. I still believe I live in one of the greatest countries, bro. I still believe that. We're just going through a tough time right now. You know what I mean? And we're on display for the world to see. And that's sad. You know what I mean? I don't think that's good for us, but you know, tough times don't last always. We just got to get through it. And if we're determined to do that, to see this through, this tough time we're in, we'll come out on the other side of it good. I wholeheartedly feel that way, man. You know what I mean? It's just, we just got to stop this whole trying to divide ourselves. I think that makes us weaker.
We walk on water and we didn't see our problems. Now all we see is problems. Like, what happened to that school of thought where your team was the best team? And the problem maybe for critics would be the arrogance of Americans. Now we have no self-esteem and we want to apologize to everybody. When did that happen, or do you not see it?
I think that emerged out of the 60s as well. I think the universities had a lot to do with that. There's the left-wing tyrannical types are particularly good at manipulating guilt, and that actually works quite well on conservatives, because conservatives tend to be more conscientious. And so if you accuse a conservative of moral impropriety on the guilt front, they're likely to take that seriously. You know, if you say to someone who's more conscientious, look, you know, you're probably a little more sexist than you could be, and you're probably a little more racist than you could be. The conservative type who's conscientious is going to think, well, you know, I'm really not perfect, and there are ways I could improve, and I could look at myself, and that's fine, because you should look at yourself. But the problem with it is that it allows the psychopathic types who are manipulative and power hungry to use your guilt as a lever. And the left in particular, especially the radical left, and those are where the real psychopathic types hang out, they're unbelievably good at manipulating guilt.
Even when we talked about certain conspiracy theories, a lot of times they were based around manipulation, right? Even when you talked about UFOs or unidentifieds, or whatever you want to classify them as, UAPs. Some of the theories with that was they were here for manipulation. Everything seems to be surrounded by manipulation. How can I manipulate you into doing what I want you to do? If that means I need to use fear, then I'll use fear. I'll use that tactic. I'll promote fear. Because then ultimately you're gonna give me what I want. You're going to put me in a position to be in control, and then I can do what I want. So it always seems to me like it boils down to some form of manipulation.
And so, yeah, they're unbelievably good at it, you know, and everybody's got something to feel guilty about, which is also something that tyrants know. And so,
Not Ainsley.
Yeah, no, well, that's good. It's good. It's good
I
to
have
be
repented
perfect.
of my sins.
Yeah, that's
There
good.
have been plenty.
Yeah, have you repented, or have you quit indulging in them?
I have quit indulging, and I think
Sorry about that.
this is not about me, Dr. Peterson. That's between me and my God.
Right, as it should be.
I did want to ask you about the marriage statistics and the statistics for ruling out children. 1 in 4 are now ruling out kids. I'm wondering if they'll change their minds when they get older, because I know I did. I focused on my career, and then the children came, you know, I wanted to have kids in my late 30s. But then 2 out of 5 think marriage is an outdated tradition. That's pretty sad.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you convince young people, as we have, that the planet's going to hell in a handbasket, and that there are too many people, and that your children do nothing but produce excess carbon dioxide, and that you're contributing to the destruction of the planet, you know, by planning to have kids, then the moral kids are going to start wondering about whether or not that's appropriate, and then the irresponsible kids have an extra reason for not doing anything that's vaguely mature. The problem with that is that, well, what the hell's the alternative? I mean, people who are alone, especially involuntarily, they just go crazy, right? Because we all need people around us to tap us into shape. That's actually how we stay sane.
I think some people are just staying in relationships and not.
Also, think about what you see. Growing up, what did you see? Most shows, movies, and different things promoted what? Marriage, white picket fence. Always not. It didn't always mean that it was gonna happen for everybody, but that was kind of like a core essential, right? You go to you get a job, you graduate, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you retire, happy ending, right? You saw it in movies, you saw it in sitcoms, you saw it in different things. It promoted that. Tell me where you find that at these days. It's sprinkled in there. You got to search for it. It's sprinkled, but where do you find that at? Most things is about this person getting caught cheating, this person sleeping with this person doing this person deciding, hey, you did it, I'm doing it. Marriage ain't. I see more promotion of just marriage ain't for me, or marriages never work, or statistics being thrown out about most marriages fail, all marriages fail, and this, that, and the third. I hear more of that now than ever before. Now, that don't mean that back in the day they didn't have marriages that fail, but it wasn't promoted as a positive. I feel like today it's being promoted as a positive. So you see more people clinging on to, I don't want to be married. And by all means, that's your choice. But I just think that more people promote that these days than ever before.
Not getting married. You look at the statistics, divorce, it's 50%. It's even higher than that in the church.
Yeah. Well, people also will assume that, what is it? The unmarried people who stay together make a big mistake, because they never commit formally to each other. And there's a strange idea lurking under that, because to me, the process of living together means something like this. So, if I tell you, well, we'll move in together and see how it goes, because that's what you mean when you say, let's move in together. You're basically saying something like, well, we'll take each other for a test run like we might with a used car, but we're each going to keep to ourselves the possibility of shifting upward if we can find someone better. Right. And that's really not much of a basis for a long-term relationship. You have to say, yeah, that's right, I have the right to upgrade. You'll do for now, but I have the right to upgrade. Well, absolutely.
But they don't.
Well, and the thing is that,
but if you do,
it's a real insult to the person that you're with, and it's an insult to yourself too. Plus, you don't really commit, right? Because you always got a back door open. And the problem with not committing to a long-term relationship is that the bloody thing is going to fail unless you're all in. Because life is very difficult, and with something like, a relationship that's supposed to span the decades, if you're not all in, it's not going to work.
Except for Goldie Hawn and Russell.
Exactly.
When you keep your eye on the
Hollywood
exit.
figured it out.
Yeah, right. Well, that's right. If there's any back door at all and any reason to take it, you're going to take it. So, like, if I know I can leave you, then I'm not going to have to discuss anything difficult with you. But if I know if I'm stuck with you for the rest of my life, I better sort things out. Then I might have enough gall to do that.
I need to figure this out because I want to be happy. I want you to be happy. I want us to work this thing out. And if I know this is my only, this is what it is, this is what I chose to do. Like, for example, me and Queen, I'll let y'all in on our relationship, right? We both came from broken homes. Both of our parents divorced, right? We came from broken homes. So when we got together, we vowed, after knowing what that felt like, and enduring certain things throughout toxic situations and marriages and stuff like that, we vowed that, okay, we breaking the chains, man. If we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and there's no other option. So we have to deal with whatever's presented to us. We got to deal with it. And if I want her to be happy, I need to address these things so that she could be happy, and vice versa. That way, this thing is a success when we're both happy and we're both moving forward.
You always want to give a contract you always want a player playing for a contract in the final year. So if every year they're playing for a renewal, you could get a better performance year to year. You don't take anything for granted.
Well, I think you can't take anything granted within the confines of a marriage. I mean, maybe I misunderstood what you meant, but you can't take things for granted in a marriage either, because unless you continue to renegotiate, you lose track of each other, and then things wander apart. Right. And so you have to be on your best game all the time if you want to keep the marriage alive.
You should be anyway. I'm just saying. Jordan, we've been over the last couple of days talking about the survey that's come out. A lot of people think that kids who are in college are predominantly leaning way to the left.
Yeah.
Now there's this new survey that has come out that has shown that 12th grade high school boys are trending conservative, whereas 12th grade high school girls are trending to the progressive side.
Yeah.
So why suddenly are these young men about to enter college or the workforce or whatever becoming more conservative?
Because they've been listening to Joe Rogan. Yeah, well, really,
so?
That's definitely part of it. I mean, there's.
You're not kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding at all. There's a countercultural conservative movement that's very, very powerful, and I also think that the young men who are tilting in that direction are at the forefront. The young women will follow. It'll be a 5-year lag or something like that, but the young men will get there first.
Well,
So that's how it looks.
You
On
see a
that
lot of the
note-
combat sports more getting into that. The combat sports, you see Zuckerberg and now doing it. A lot of people trying to. All right, if society's trying to feminize me, I'm going to push back in some other way, and they might be finding the conservative movement for that.
Yeah, well, there's some danger in that too, because there are people who are more extreme on the sort of pro-masculine side. Like Andrew Tate, people like that sort of spring to mind that become attractive to men that are being like feminized in the manner that you described, and so.
Well, on the note of what you were talking about, the pendulum swinging, when does it swing back the other way with schools and teaching sex to our children at an early age? A lot of people had a problem with what Ron DeSantis did down in Florida. I didn't, because I have a child going into 2nd grade. We're not talking about sex. We don't talk about that at all. She just knows God puts a baby in a mom's tummy.
I think what's happening in the States is that the answer to the problem of sex education in schools is we'll just take our kids out of the damn schools. I think the whole system will collapse. I also think if the Republican governors had a lick of sense, especially with regard to long-term planning, that they would take teacher certification away from the faculties of education. Because the faculties of education are, what would you say, they're sort of rotten central in the university system, and they have a complete hammerlock on teacher certification, and therefore, a grip on the whole education system.
So just real quick, because I want you to talk about your online university, starting with your daughter.
Yeah. Well, I'm not very happy with what the universities have done over the last, let's say, 20 years.
Which you've been part of.
Yeah, until about 6 years ago. We're trying to put a system online, Peterson Academy, that will drop the cost of a bachelor's degree to $4,000. We think we can find the best lecturers in the world and bring them to people, and also instantiate a set of extremely, what would you say, severe and high quality accreditation standards for the graduates, so that people who graduate from our university will be stamped with a credential that indicates genuine competence, literacy, intelligence, conscientiousness, and so forth. And I think that whole system is rife for an extreme upset.
How do we get it?
Well, we need something, because that's one thing that you graduating out of college, out of high school, and the competency is not there. It's not there. I feel like it's more coasting through school nowadays than ever before. Ever before. Like, I don't see kids staying up to 1, 2, 3 in the morning, studying, cramming, doing all different things. That seems non-existent, and it shows. It really does show. Remember when you used to have to go sit in the library for all weekend, all night, almost fall asleep? You did fall asleep in the library, wake up, trying to get to class the next day. All of that type of stuff. Do you see that anymore? Where's the libraries? It's on your phone. That's cool, but nobody's using it. Nobody's using this stuff. So yeah, I think the competency level is way down. That's not for everybody. I'm just saying, I think overall, yeah.
Way too expensive. We'll have the online at Peterson Academy likely in November.
Only
We've got 30
$4,000
professors.
for the whole 4 years?
Well, we hope we can do it cheaper than that, but yeah, that's the plan.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Is there a political tilt or tint to it?
Not purposefully. I mean, there hasn't been a purposeful political tilt to anything that I've done. Just tried to say what I thought was true. Turns out that tends to be more conservative now in the climate that's being generated politically. But
So
that wasn't purposeful. I never thought of myself as a conservative.
Are you selling it as if you want to think like me?
No, I'm selling it if you want to think. Period. It's a tricky issue, because it's really not obvious why you would want to think, because it's rather painful, right?
It's too hard these days. Why think?
Because acting out stupid ideas is even worse.
Woo. Yeah.
Right? No, but that's really the answer.
Whew. Let that breathe for a minute. That was a bar. Let that breathe for a moment. Gosh, I'm backing that up. He has the right to say that again.
why you would want to think, because it's rather painful, right?
It's too hard these days. Why think?
Because acting out stupid ideas is even worse.
Yeah.
Right? No, but that's really the answer, is why should you debate with people? Why should you have difficult conversations with yourself? And the answer is to straighten things out before you put them into action. Because bad as thinking is, not thinking is worse. And people aren't taught that well either. And we'd like to make that clear to people who are, say, enrolling in this university. You know, think or die or suffer. Those are really your options.
But don't you think interacting is key too? So you could speak, but you want to hear what other people have to say, and then maybe test you and make you go deeper in your beliefs, or change
well, there isn't
your mind.
much difference in speaking to people, especially having difficult conversations and thinking. I mean, even when you think internally, what you're really doing is you're setting an internal dialogue up in your head. So, you know, you make yourself an enemy of the position that you hold. You let your enemy have his say, and you listen. If you're thinking verbally and you're actually thinking, that's what you're doing. It might be 2 or 3 people at the same time, you know, having at her in your head. But most people think by talking, which is why free speech is so important, right? You can't speak freely. You can't think. And if you can't think, then you suffer. So that's the cause.
What do we need to be doing at home with our children? What did your parents do with you?
They were encouraging. You know, I think one of the things that really distinguished my family, to the degree that it was distinguished, was that my father in particular, my mother was very accepting and a very loving person, but my father was a very encouraging person with relatively high standards. But his proposition was something like, well, you can be doing better, but I think you can do it. And that encouragement is extremely useful. And I think part of the reason that my work has been popular online and in the public domain is because it's encouraging. Now, and I don't tell young men, for example, this is back to the issue of young men, I don't say, well, you're okay the way you are, because what the hell, what young man wants to hear that? Every young man who has any sense at all knows perfectly well that he's not okay the way he is. If he was okay the way he is, women would be flocking to him, and they're not. And the reason for that is he has a lot to learn still. Yeah. You know, but you can say, well, you have a lot to learn. You know, look at you, you're a mess. You have a lot to learn. But you could learn it, and if you did, well, maybe you make something of yourself, and then there's some hope in that message, right? You know, because you think, well, if you just accepted people the way they are, they'd be happy. It's like, no, they wouldn't, because they have nothing to shoot for. And people who have nothing to shoot for aren't happy. Because happiness actually is a consequence of moving towards something that you're aiming for. So no aim, no happiness. That's another good thing for young people to know too. If you don't have a goal, that is what technically happiness occurs when you see yourself moving towards a valued goal. That's how it works neuropsychologically. That's how it works chemically. It's an indication of progress towards a goal. So the higher your goal, the higher your possibility for happiness, even though you have to suffer from the distance.
You're never going to have it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Listen, if you don't set a goal, you'll never be happy.
We are really happy that you would drop by. Wide-ranging conversation. Now let's have some cheese.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds
Jordan
good.
Peterson.
We're going to turn now to the tragedy of the Obama estate in Martha's Vineyard, where the family chef was found dead. The Obamas were not there at the time. We're learning more about what happened. DeMarco Morgan has the details. Good morning, DeMarco.
Good morning, guys. Talk about a tragedy here. The husband and father of 2 went missing about 100 feet offshore Sunday evening. His body wouldn't be recovered until the following day. The Obamas saying they now join the victim's family and those who knew him in grieving the loss of Tafari Campbell.
African-American male on a paddleboard, no life preserver.
This morning, tragedy unfolding near the Obama family's Martha's Vineyard estate. Police recovering the body of 45-year-old Tafari Campbell, a beloved personal chef and friend of the former president and first lady. The call for help came in Sunday evening for the missing paddleboarder, who witnesses tell police was last seen wearing all black.
I had heard about this story, and I was trying to follow up on it. That's why I wanted to watch this, but I didn't know he was out there paddleboarding. I just heard former chef of Obama died. You know what I mean? And I didn't hear anything after that, so I wanted to know what was going on. But paddleboarding? Wow.
So they eventually lost eye contact with him.
A 40-year-old male, possible drowning.
Campbell's paddleboard and hat would surface, but no sign of Campbell. Then the unimaginable. The husband and father of 2 found dead 100 feet from shore at a depth of about 8 feet in the Edgartown Great Pond. Police say divers found his body by deploying a side-scan sonar from a boat. Campbell first worked as a sous chef for the Obamas at the White House.
Gotta keep it under lock and key.
Seen here brewing beer in this White House video.
Wow. What you do is you take the beer bottle.
Now authorities investigating the drowning. Campbell was on the Vineyard visiting. The Obamas were not there at the time of the incident. Mr. and Mrs. Obama released in a statement calling him a warm, fun, extraordinary, kind person who made all of our lives a little brighter, adding he was a talented sous chef at the White House. He's been part of our lives ever since, and our hearts are broken that he's gone. Campbell is survived by his wife and their twin boys. The couple's Instagram posts over the years showing their close relationship and tight-knit family.
And state and local police are investigating the incident.
Wow.
And guys, if you go to his Instagram page, it was full of life and personality. This is a loss right here. Yes.
Really.
I don't know much about paddleboarding. Y'all tell me about that, man. All I know was about the water is that you just got to be careful out there because the current just does not play, man. And you think you the best swimmer, but that current can teach you otherwise. That's the only thing I know.
And we're thinking of his wife and his twin boys right now. All right, DeMarco.